wrapped up our opening rounds, got our losers bracket tournament out of the way, and now the stage was set for our eliminations. Every race from now on was a do or die situation for everybody. Winner moves on, loser goes home. Out of the BSO members, we had 3 out of the 4 make it through into the second round. Myself, Greg, and Alex all making it through, with Matt almost coming all the way back in the losers bracket and joining us as well. Out of the BSO members, Alex was the first one to race in the second round, and he was up against Mike with his red F-150 Lightning. We saw a little bit of Mike's F-150 in the test and 2 session held before the races started, and his truck looked like it was going down pretty quick. We wanted to see how he ended up doing against Alex in this race. Right off the line, Alex gets off straight, but not the same for Mike. He ends up going into the right, into the crowd that's over there. I believe he had a tire issue. He said that later on in the day. Unlucky for Mike, but that means Alex is moving on into the third round. Next up in the second round was the Battle of the Novas. It was myself with my 69 Pro Line Nova against the Nova 2 of Danny. I was really concerned with the wind after the first race, and I just wanted to make sure I wasn't going to get blown to the left or to the right and maybe even cross into the other lane.
No way, Mark. Nice. Yeah.
Turns out my car actually made quite a pass. It was quick, but it was all for nothing as I just barely red lighted off the line. So right away gives Danny the automatic win and ends my King of the Streets tournament. Danny moves on to the third round and my day was over. So last but not least in the second round was Greg, and he was taking on Joe from Hot Rod Hobbies, who shut down the store to come out to our event. And he brought out his green Octane to take on Greg's Chevelle. So at first the crowd thought that they saw Joe just knock off Greg. Greg went for a little cruise down the track, and it was all because Joe ended up jumping. So we see another competitor in the second round getting a little antsy. Joe makes a pass, but ends up looking down and sees that he is red lighted. His day is over. Greg moving on into the third round.
Oh, okay, okay. Oh, damn! Wow! Great racing to end off our second round.
We saw our loser bracket winner Bill end up coming and driving around Chad at the end of that race, so he moved on into the third round. He was still in it. We're now getting ready for our third round, and we're starting to get serious. So with myself out of the picture, the BSO was down to 2 guys. We had Greg left and Alex left. And Greg had a nice matchup now against Ryan. We've raced Ryan before in callouts, but this day in this tournament, he was really starting to show some real pace. And he was quick, and this could be Greg's really first big race of this tournament. This is a case of sometimes where you see a race decided at the starting line. Ryan looked really fast. He was starting to knock off some other people before getting to this race. But this time he's falling asleep at the light. Greg ends up catching a good reaction. And it actually looked like Ryan was starting to close the gap at the end, but it was too little too late. Greg ends up moving on into the 4th round, and Ryan's day is now over. The other BSO member that moved on was Alex, and he was taking on another member of Josh's crew as well, and Jabari. This is a guy that we're also familiar with, and Jabari really seemed to find some pace as well. This was a much closer race than Greg's race against Ryan. Now we got both cars leaving off the line. A pretty good matchup on the reactions. And Alex just pulling out a little bit of a gap at the end. It looked like Jabari had some real speed in that top end coming up. But Alex hangs on. And now 2 of Josh's crew members are gone by the BSO in the 3rd round.
You killed the reaction ball, man.
Some good 3rd round matchups there to end off that 3rd round. We saw Bill eliminate himself with a little bit of a jump. He red lights. His day is now over. And then we're moving on to the 4th round. We're getting really close to those semis. So luck of the draw for Alex in the chip draw. He ends up getting the bye run. So he is going to move on to the semis that way. But Greg has to earn his way there with a race against Mark. So at this point, there is a decent amount of pressure for Greg here. Alex is moving on with the bye run, but if Greg can move on, we would have 2 BSO members moving on to the semifinals, which just increases the chances of us defending our territory and really proving to people that we could be one of the faster groups. Another good reaction from Greg on this one, but even in the top end, it didn't look like he was holding back on this one. He gave it all. You can see the gap at the end. He was moving pretty quick at that top end view. Greg is moving on, so now we had 2 BSO members going to the semifinals. So a very interesting chip draw for the semifinals puts Alex and Greg racing each other. So what this means is one BSO member's day is about to end, and one BSO member is going to end up representing the BSO in the finals. In the other semi-final, we had a matchup between Jeff and John, who's coming all the way out from Sudbury with his car Little Monster. What an insane race to have for the semifinals here. It looked like Jeff did everything he could here. He actually got a good start out of the right lane, better reaction than John. And then right at the end, right before the line, John drives around him. Must have had some top end power there that Jeff just didn't have. John's going to the finals of the King of the Streets, and he's awaiting the matchup with Alex and Greg. So now the other semifinal, we have both BSO members, Alex and Greg, lining up. A matchup that the BSO is very familiar with, as they're constantly battling each other. The winner of this matchup goes to represent the BSO in the King of the Streets finals. It actually looked like both of them got off at the same time. Really good reactions on that Pro Tree light. But at the top end, Greg just starts to pull away from Alex. I'm not sure if Alex had to correct or let off, but Greg ends up moving on to represent the BSO in the finals of the King of the Streets, and Alex is out in the semifinal. Great couple of semifinals, and now that leaves us with the finals of the King of the Streets. We had John, who came all the way out from Sudbury, taking on Greg, representing the BSO in the home spot. Best of 3 final. We didn't want to leave it all to one race at this point. So best of 3, switching lanes. First guy to win 2 out of the 3 is the King of the Streets. Lights come down, decent reactions from both guys, but John ends up losing control about half track, ends up crossing into Greg's lane, flips it over. His race was done there. This means Greg is up 1-0, and he only needs one more win to become King of the Streets. So second race of the best of 3, Greg now in the left lane against the Little Monster in the right lane. Both guys get off again. It looks like Greg beat him a little bit on the reaction, but this time John goes hard left off the line. He crosses the line. Greg is allowed to cruise to the finish, and he becomes the King of the Streets in 2020. I just wanted to give a thanks to everybody who came out that day. Everybody raced clean. We didn't have any cheating. We didn't have any fighting. Everybody was in great spirits. I want to thank our sponsors, Hot Rod Hobbies and Team Zombie Canada, who supplied some prizes for our event at the end. I'm still surprised at how many people came out from several regions away, and I was so happy that happened. There was literally nobody else that we knew at the beginning of this year, and it turns out we had a group of 30 people come out towards the end to cap off this 2020 season. And we are hoping this is just the beginning of many more big events like this to happen in the future.